What's up, everyone? Tomorrow is set to be one of the biggest days of the week. Looking at the market today, there was not too much movement, but the stock market is kind of coiling up and it's ready to move in a big way for a couple reasons that we're about to talk about. So Tom, looking at the heat map today, we can see that it was pretty mixed and that most of the red movement actually came from big tech stocks. Google, Microsoft, Apple, Nvidia, Amazon, companies like that really struggled today, where we saw finance companies like JP Morgan, American Express, Wells Fargo, and more actually pop up. So we're in like a weird situation now where the market itself isn't doing anything, but we're seeing some industries do a lot better than others. So Tom, tomorrow's going to be a big day. What do we need to know?
Yeah, it's going to be a huge day. And as we've been talking about all week, we are going to see Jerome Powell actually speaking tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. This is going to be a pretty big event. You can see here, it's on the federalreserve.gov calendar here. He's speaking at 1:30 at the Economic Outlook, Inflation, and the Labor Market at the Brookings Institution. So it's going to be a pretty big event. I know that there's a lot of people eyeing this up. You can see that there's a few articles like on investing.com and a few others that do end up mentioning Powell in them. But Mike, I know that Powell, this is not an FOMC event, so I don't want people to get too overhyped by this. But I will say, depending on what he says, the market can end up moving up or down in a big way. And one thing that I'm very curious about, Mike, is if he's going to talk about potentially going back towards 50 basis points or not. I know that that's been a hot topic lately. And if he kind of gives an insight that they might be talking about scaling back their rate increases back to 50 basis points, then I think the market might go on a pretty good uptrend tomorrow. So hopefully I think that we see a nice, I guess, move back to the upside. But I will say, Mike, like I said, I'm not too overly excited because it's not really an FOMC event. So I don't think he's going to try to impact things too much.
Yeah, so the main reason tomorrow will be so important is because we have one of the most powerful people in the world, Jerome Powell, speaking, right? Anytime he speaks, especially related to the economy and inflation, that has a lot of influence on the market overall. Just like Tom said though, tomorrow there will be no interest rate change. That is on December 14th. But the main thing to know is Jerome Powell will speak and he has the power to move the market in a big way. Most of the time it's to the upside, but it definitely has moved to the downside in the past as well. And when it does move down, it tends to be pretty volatile and the moves tend to be pretty powerful.
Yeah, they really do. And I'm really hoping to see maybe some of these yields start to fall back down after he talks tomorrow. Like we all know, obviously the interest rates and everything like that tie into yields and bonds and everything. So really watch USO2Y, US10Y, US30Y. Watch those bonds tomorrow. I think it's going to be a pretty big day. Even for the US dollar, I feel like we might see a lot of volatility. And the US dollar has actually been dipping down quite a bit recently. So hopefully it can start to maybe break below 105. I know that's a pretty big level here in the shorter term. But Mike, it was a pretty mixed day across the board, but we did see some stocks start to actually move up, like some of these stocks like Union Pacific. I know there was some pretty big news today with some it's actually pretty bad. It sounds like there was going to be some strikes here going on, obviously between the railroad unions and some of the railroad companies like Union Pacific, for example. But it does look like that they actually rallied as President Biden urges Congress to step in. And a lot of these analysts, like the analyst Jonathan Chappell at Evercore, he said that this essentially means that this removes the risk of a strike from happening. So sounds pretty good. We saw a lot of these transportation stocks like Union Pacific, which is specifically tied to the railroads, going up. CSX is another big one that people like to look at too. And we even saw UPS and FedEx go up today, FDX. Both of those stocks started recovering well too. And FedEx is about to enter into this gap territory here.
There we go. Good stuff. So, some of the most volatile stocks over the past couple of weeks have had to do with earnings. So, what does the schedule look like for the rest of this week?
Yeah, it's still pretty big. So tomorrow is actually going to be probably the second biggest day for the market, but to me, the biggest day, the most interesting day for me, we're going to see a lot of stocks reporting. XPeng or XPEVs reporting in the morning. I know some of these China stocks have been on a huge run to the upside this week. So hopefully XPEV does well with earnings. But then even better than that, we have Snowflake and Salesforce in after hours. Those two stocks are pretty huge, and even Five Below, in my opinion, should do pretty well. Watch Five Below. I think that that's a bit of an outlier here, especially with all the Black Friday stuff going on.
Good stuff. Yeah, a lot of these companies like Five Below, Snowflake, Salesforce, and more definitely do move big with earnings. So keep them on your radar. Of course, they will most likely move in a crazy way tomorrow in after hours. So definitely watch them. But Tom, I have to talk about a stock that I've really been eyeing up, and that is Enphase, ENPH. So this is basically a solar company for anyone who doesn't know. It is double topping in a major way off of that $320 level. And honestly, it's looking a little bit weak, and it definitely has room to fall. Now, it does have some support right at $300 a share. If it does not hold that, I can definitely see this one falling. It's looking pretty weak.
Yeah, it really is. That is a huge double top up there, Mike. I cannot believe that it hit off that level in such a big way. It's almost exact, actually, almost to the cent. I know it's not exactly on, but very, very close there. That's definitely a big move back to the downside on this daily chart. And in the shorter term, Mike, I see a bit of support, maybe around like 300, then maybe like 298. So hopefully we can get down to there tomorrow and possibly go even lower. But I know Enphase has been one of your favorite stocks this year, Mike. I was surprised to hear you say this one to the downside.
Well, it's nice to trade in the sense that it has like good moves every now and then. I own some shares for the long term, but it's not, it's just to the point where the risk doesn't justify the potential reward with it, and then on top of that, I've seen a lot of bearish plays with just energy overall lately. So it's losing its, it's losing its good risk reward setup.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. It's definitely looking overextended. It's actually been doing very well this year compared to most stocks. Like, let's go look at like Meta, for example. And yeah, you can obviously tell which one's been doing better there. But one of my favorites today is Carnival Cruise Lines, CCL. I know this is another stock that this year has been very, very bad. Obviously, a lot of stocks have been falling down quite a bit. But I will say CCL recently has been bouncing up a little bit off of this like $9 to $9.15 support. And I'm really happy to see it kind of flying back up today. Now, I do see a bit of a range going on here with CCL, Mike. And when I look at it on like a bit of a longer term chart, you guys can start to see how there's that big support right around 920. And then there's also a big resistance up here, really close to $10. So I'm going to really watch this stock for the next couple days. If we could start to maybe move back up and maybe start to fill that a bit of like that gap to the downside there from back on November 15th, then I think we could start to see a huge move. But $10 should be pretty big. It's a big psychological even level. So watch for that break potentially.
Good stuff. All right, another one I'm watching is WBD. I've been watching this stock a ton over the past year. It's at a really good level in my opinion, especially for the long term. But we also covered this one a couple weeks ago related to a giant move by the smart money or hedge funds. Basically, WBD is holding up pretty well, especially compared to the market overall. When you look at WBD over like the past couple of weeks, and especially when you compare that to even some big tech stocks like Apple or really any other big tech stocks, it's holding up quite well. With WBD, I am definitely watching it to the upside. It's not necessarily like a trade for tomorrow, but more so or over the course of like the rest of the week and the next couple weeks.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it's a stock that's been down a lot. I know that we've been watching it, and Warner Bros. Should do a little bit better, Mike. I mean, all these streamers have been falling off a ton, so it's not just their fault. Like, even if we go look at the biggest, well, it might not be the biggest. I know it probably is the biggest, but don't quote me on that, guys. But Netflix is one of the bigger streamers out there, and you guys can see even they've been tumbling off. So if you're gonna, get mad at WBD's downward movement, you gotta look at these other streamers too, because I mean, they've all been extremely rough this year. But I like it, Mike. It's extremely low, and I do think it could be a good move back to the upside. And my final stock today is actually UPS. I know that we talked about this a little bit earlier with the railroad movement. Obviously, they're part of that transportation sector, and they started really popping off. Now, one interesting thing is that they're saying that the strikes are essentially averted with the railroads. But one thing that was interesting to me, Mike, is UPS has been pretty much gapping up all day today. I'm kind of curious if this one was moving up because people might have thought, well, hey, maybe if these railroads go on strike, UPS and FedEx are going to get a lot more business. But it looks like they're following up the railroads anyway. So, hey, I like the setup. And if they can start to break like 185, I'll definitely watch for that move back to the upside. They are extremely, well, I would say on like a yearly basis, a little bit oversold at least.
All right, sounds good. Well, Tom, let's get right into the momentum plays for tomorrow. With the first one, we have Apple or AAPL to the downside.
Man, that poor Apple here. It's been very rough for them, and they've had a lot of bad news coming out of China and stuff like that as well. So keep that in mind, but go ahead and make them break down below 140. I would just do 140.35 and even watch 140 even just in case we break below that in pre-market.
Sounds good. With the next one, we have AMD also to the downside.
Yeah, all these tech stocks today are really sold off. Go ahead and make AMD break down below $73 even.
And with the last one, we have MSFT, and we need both directions.
Yeah, so they actually bounce off intraday support here. So make them break down below 238. If they can break that, watch for a move to the downside. If they can move above 241 back to the upside, watch for a potential recovery.
Sounds good. So we're watching MSFT, AMD, and AAPL for potential day trades to the downside tomorrow, only if they break below the levels Tom listed. And then with MSFT, we also have that level to the upside as well. So make sure to keep that in mind for a potential day trade to the upside tomorrow. But Tom, we now have to talk about the big money trade from today. So today I saw someone put $1.7 million into MLCO. So basically this company has to do with casinos and resorts in China. $1.7 million went into the 10 strike call options for January 20th of 2023. These call options are kind of far out of the money. At the same time, though, this stock has a wild, it moves in a wild way, we'll say. It has some big moves. So this trade is very risky, but at the same time, it has a lot of potential for reward. Most likely it will lose, but in the event it wins, it could be like a giant winner. There's been a lot of bullish options activity with a lot of China stocks lately. This is one of them, so keep that in mind. But for those of you who don't understand options, the main thing you need to know is that the smart money here is making a bet that MLCO will be above $10 by January 20th of 2023. And ideally, the higher this one goes, the better for the person behind this trade.
Yeah, definitely. That would be awesome if they were longing this, and it definitely looks like they are, especially like when you look at the chart here. One thing I really like about this, Mike, is that just in like a macro overall sense here, I'm looking at Melco and I'm just noticing like they go on these trends where they have big downwards moves and then they usually recover up quite a bit before falling off again. And I feel like they're definitely into that zone where they've been falling down so much this year. I feel like that they can definitely start to come back up a little bit. And I do see a pretty big resistance here right around $8.20 or $8.25. Maybe if we could start to break that, it could even be a pretty good little breakout trade for a couple days, but looks pretty good, Mike. That's awesome to see them getting in here. And I'm really bullish on these casino stocks, guys. I actually, as far as some of my plays today, I know I called out CCL and UPS were the two I talked about. I initially had Win on there and I exchanged it for UPS, but these casino stocks are fantastic right now. And the news in China is really helping out. And I've even been seeing news that some of these protests are starting to maybe, people are speculating the government might start to ease up on some of these restrictions. So sounds really good for MLCO.
Yeah, we will see. It's definitely, it's been a wild past couple of weeks in terms of market movement and then especially in terms of events. So it's going to get pretty crazy throughout the rest of the week. The first couple of days haven't been filled with too much movement, but I think things will definitely start to heat up as the week goes on.
Yeah, definitely. It's been one of those weeks so far where we have seen some good movement. It's just been all to the downside. And one thing I don't like about it is it's very choppy, and I feel like we're just getting like one big move each day. Like you can see yesterday, the big move came in like right around lunchtime. We saw a big drop down below support. Today, initially, we started off very choppy and then finally broke support again right around like 10 a.m. Central Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So pretty crazy there, Mike. You know, it's like we're not getting a lot of opportunity besides for those two main moves. So hopefully maybe Powell can start to move the market tomorrow. And I will say the SPY, even though it's down, we are nearing some pretty big supports again. Like 393 is pretty big from the past couple weeks, and even bigger than that, 390 even has been huge the past few weeks. We've seen a ton of bounces there.
You know it. If you guys learn anything from our videos or you just like them, make sure to subscribe. We post brand new videos every single day, and when you subscribe, you'll see our videos recommended to you more often. So definitely subscribe. We post every single day. But Tom, do you have any final thoughts heading into tomorrow?
Yeah, one last thing, guys, is go Team USA. Let's go, guys. I know a lot of people were hyped up about this today. Looks like they beat Iran 1-0, so they are going to advance. I will say, Mike, soccer's not our strong point here in the States, or I should say football. People are going to cremate me in the comments for that one, but soccer/football, it's not the biggest sport here in the States, but hey, it's cool to see us advancing like this. So go Team USA. Let's hopefully see some good movement. I know a lot of people are making jokes today. Every time that they were saying every time that we scored, they would buy calls and stuff. It had me kind of laughing there.
There we go. Also, I want to give a giant shout out to today's member of the day in the StockedUp Discord. A huge shout out to Christian. You've been in the chat for over 2 years now, and you're very active, and you're just a great member of the community. So huge shout out to Christian. Thanks for being an awesome member of the StockedUp Discord community. Also, guys, definitely make sure to check out this video on the screen right now. There are some big risk factors with the market overall, and there's some things really heating up in China that you need to know about. Make sure to watch this video on the screen right now. It's pretty important.